Hey, what's going on, guys? So, we are going to learn the fourth and final part of Chapter 9. So, basically, it's nothing new. It's just taking a problem that we've been dealing with and adding one extra little step. Okay? This is supposed to be a 26. Can I squeeze it? Of course. So, if I gave you this problem, 13x squared plus 26x, and asked you to factor it, you all would amazingly tell me that the GCF is 13x, and it factors to x plus 2. And up until this point, I would say, great job, congratulations. This is how you factor by pulling out a GCF. Okay? But what we're doing on this video is we are not only factoring polynomials, but we are solving polynomials. Okay? And when I say the word solve a polynomial, okay? When I say solve, basically, you're taking the polynomial, setting it equal to 0. Okay? So, again, let's pretend we had this problem, and you have 13x squared plus 26x equals 0. The equals 0 automatically tells us we need to solve it. But the first step we still always need to do is factor it like we were before. Okay? So if you look and we factor this, we are going to get 13. Ooh, that's ugly. 13x as our GCF, and we're left with an x plus 2 equals 0. The newest thing we have to do for these problems when we solve them is we really have to think about what is actually going on between the 13x and this whole quantity. Okay? Maybe if I put parentheses around the 13x, which you don't normally do, but I will for our sake, and you look and you're like, what's going on between these two parentheses? They're not being added, they're not being subtracted, they're not being divided. So the only thing that's left is multiplication. Okay? So that gets us thinking. We have this quantity times this quantity. Now, they're being multiplied, and the answer of their multiplication, or the product, is 0. Okay? If we remember, 2 times 0 is 0. X times 0 is 0. Anything times 0 is 0. Okay? Just hold that thought for a second. So, if we have two quantities, 13x and x plus 2, being multiplied together and they equal 0, that must mean that at least one of these is 0. Since we don't know what x is, we don't know which one's 0. So we need to find out when both of those times will happen. So you take 13x, set it equal to 0, x plus 2, set it equal to 0, and solve. Divide both sides by 13. X is equal to 0. Minus a 2, minus a 2. X equals negative 2. So when we solve a polynomial, you must actually tell us what x is equal to. So the answer for solving this polynomial is 0 and x equals negative 2. Okay? And on this next slide, I will demonstrate why that is. Okay? So we had 13x times x plus 2 is equal to 0. And we found that x is equal to 0 or negative 2. And you may say, hey, Mr. Flores, how do we get x equaling two different things? But that's a great question. And the answer is because there's two instances for x where this is equal to 0. Let's do our first one. 13 times 0 times 0 plus 2. When we simplify, that's just going to become 0. And this becomes 2. 0 times anything is 0, which is equal to 0. Hey, look, 0 is equal to 0. We were right. So now you say, well, obviously, if we plug in a negative 2, it can't work. But you're wrong. Because 13 times a negative 2 and negative 2 plus 2. 13 times negative 2 is negative 26. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Anything times 0 is 0, and 0 equals 0. Would you look at that? Both of them work. Okay? And that is how we have, wrong one. And that is how we have x equaling two answers. So, and that's all solving a polynomial is. You always, again, follow your normal factoring procedure. Then once you factor it, it'll be set equal to 0. Take all the factors on the left, set them equal to 0 individually, and solve for x. And it's really not harder than that, but sometimes the problems just get a little more difficult, but I'll show you how to do that. Alright, what's going on, guys? So, back to solving polynomials. Alright, so, let's look at this bad guy. We have an x squared plus a 7x plus a 12. So right off the bat, since it's set equal to 0, we know we're going to be solving. But nothing's going to change because we're still amazing at math, and we're going to do exactly what we've been doing. So if we look here, the leading coefficient is a 1. We can't factor anything out. So we need to find two numbers that multiply to 12 and add to 7. For time's sake purposes, I'm going to automatically know that it is x plus 4, x plus 3 equals 0. Because 4 times 3 is 12, 4 plus 3 is 7, and we're in good shape, we're looking good. Now if you forget how to do that, check back in my last video where I teach you how to factor trinomials. But now we are left with the dilemma we were left with in the last problem, is that we factored it, now we need to solve it. Okay? So if you look here, we have x plus 4 times x plus 3. Since the product of these two things equals 0, that means that this quantity is 0 or this quantity is 0. Since we don't know what x is, we need to find out when both of those cases are. So you're going to take x plus 4, set it equal to 0, x plus 3, set it equal to 0, and we are left with x equals negative 4, x equals negative 3. And those are our two answers. X equals negative 4, x equals negative 3. So to solve this, these are our answers. Okay? Quick and easy, pretty simple. Moving along. Alright? Let me try to find a fun one. Alright. 2x squared minus 3x minus 20 equals 0. Right off the bat, if you factor out a GCF, of course not, a 2 and a 3 and a 20, no common factor besides 1. So since we are left with a leading coefficient of 2, we know that this is going to be one of the harder ones. So let's put a 2x and let's put an x. Now the two terms going here are going to have to equal to negative 20. Since these are both negative, we know that one of them is going to be negative. And let's say that we do minus 4 and plus 5. Okay, just so we can see if this works. 2x times x is 2x squared. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. 2x times 4 is negative 8x. 5 times x is 5x for a total of, too many lines, for a total of negative 3x, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so we know that this is the true factoring, this is the right factoring form of 2x squared minus 3x minus 20. But since we're solving and it's set equal to 0, we must find out when is this 0 and when is that 0, and that is when we will arrive at our destination. So we have 2x plus 5 equals 0, subtract 5. 2x equals negative 5, divide by 2. And you get x is equal to negative 5 halves. Alright, I got in the way of this one, but let's try and squeeze it, because that's fun. We're going to add 4 to both sides, and we get x is equal to 4, leaving us with an answer of x equals negative 5 halves, and x equals a positive 4. Now a lot of you guys are going to not like me for this one because it's a fraction, but hey, fractions need love too. So the answer to this one is x equals negative 5 halves, and x equals a positive 4. And again, if you can't factor, we call it prime, but not this one. So again, if you have any questions on factoring, revert back to the previous videos, and up next will be a quick little video on word problems, because I know how much you guys love them.